Dear distinguished leaders, speakers and delegates, good afternoon. I'm very honoured today to be here representing the Urban Redevelopment Authority, which is the planning authority of Singapore. Today I'll just give a brief sharing of some of the new initiatives that we're working on to make Singapore a more walkable city. This is a quick overview of my presentation. Just some quick background on what Singapore is about for some of us who may not have visited Singapore, and also what are the efforts that we are working on, and some challenges. Well, Singapore is a small city-state. We are at the southern end of the Malaysia Peninsula. We are about 5.7 million. And in terms of land area, we are about the size of New York City. But because we are also a country, we have much more constraints to work with. And to continue to plan for growth, we need to look at what else we can do to plan for a more dense but yet a more livable city. Some facts and stats for those who are interested in numbers. We are very dense, and we have come to realize that, given our growing population and density, we have already used like 12% of our land for transport, and that's not going to be sustainable going forward. Although some of you may be familiar that, I think about 10 years ago, we have already implemented electronic road pricing. Sorry. Okay. So we have already implemented electronic road pricing, which actually allows us to control traffic congestion during peak hours together with the Land Transport Authority. And we recognize that going forward, there's more that we need to do. Learning from Hong Kong that they're hitting 90% public transport mode share during peak hours, I think Singapore can definitely do more. So what can we do to move towards car light and walkability? I think one of the key thrusts is really to increase the number of trips made on public transport during peak hours. So together, I think we are always working in collaboration with our Land Transport Authority. We push towards a goal of 75% from the 66% today by 2030. This is mapped out as part of our gazetted master plan, which is a plan that sets out our development for the next 15 years. And in order to do that, to achieve that, we really need to expand our rail network. It's actually twice what we have today, 360 kilometers, and that will bring us to a rail density that is comparable with all the major cities today. However, just expanding the rail network is not good enough. In order to get people to move from traveling in cars to public transport, what we need to do is to make sure that the first and the last mile is convenient, easy, comfortable for them. And that really means that we need to look at walking and cycling. So what's our vision? I think there were some questions about who gives the authority and the power. So here I quote my Prime Minister. And he has said that, yes, we will move towards a car light. Well, that's our term, we coined it. Car light Singapore. What can we do? We have to rely less on cars. Because we cannot keep building roads. Singapore has limited land. We need to focus on building infrastructure that supports public transport. And we want a solution where the roads are clear and there are many alternatives and people find it easy, convenient, effective to move in public transport. How do we do it? We need a whole of government framework. In Singapore, we work very closely with our Land Transport Authority and many other agencies, which is kind of listed. And together with also active mobility enthusiasts. There are stakeholder groups, they are actively pushing for cycling and walking, and we involve them in our community efforts. So these are just some key initiatives that we try to do. So I'll now quickly touch on some key initiatives under these four main trusts. First, I'll touch on policies. So what are some design principles that we need to think about when we plan for walkability? I think it's quite clear here. I think many of you know this, so I will not elaborate. Really, you need something that's safe, that's direct, and that's really comfortable for people. So together, we have mapped out a typology where the government agencies that are implementing and developing plans can look at what is the standard roadside table that's needed. How do you ensure that there's a safe cycling path and a safe footpath that's also providing planting. I think for Singapore, we have, from very early days, set aside land for planting. We make sure that our roads are lined with trees so that we can always go towards being a garden city. So we looked at how we can make it safer, why cycling must be further away from the main flow of people, closer to the roads, and also how we can set aside space next to the bus stops to deconflict the congestion when we reach this kind of nodes, or what we call a pedestrian priority zone. And recently, just a couple of months back, we have started to impose a new regulation. It's tied to our traffic impact assessment that LTA, our Transport Authority, regulates. So when developers submit their development applications to us, they have to submit what we call a walking and cycling plan. So in this plan, they have to show us how they can make their development take into consideration what it means to have a safe walking and cycling network around it. So you apply to these developments: commercial, retail, business park, and schools. So these are some of the key considerations that they have to take into consideration when they submit their plans. And the agencies, LTA and ourselves, will take a look at it. We want to make sure that there's good connectivity in their plan to public transport facilities and good crossings, and there's minimal conflict with cycling paths, pedestrian roads, good signages, and even during the construction period that there are adequate footpaths that are provided to serve the community that's living in the neighborhood. Now I'll move on to infrastructure. So what is walkability about is really also about upstream planning. When we look at our city, we have already looked at how we can ensure that it's a good walkability. So in this, we show how we look at, this is our city center, it's Marina Bay, Orchard Road, and where are the areas where there's activity generating users to activate the streets, where are the public spaces, how are they linked up. And what we want to do is to expand on the details of these plans to all the major key transport nodes island-wide, where it's an integrated transport hub, bus interchange, MRT stations, in those areas where there's a huge congregation of pedestrians, and we need to make sure that it's safe and it's easy and it's walkable. Of course, there are different layers of pedestrian networks. Besides the street life, we also sometimes will need to provide underground pedestrian links, given the volume of people that's traveling, and given our weather. I mean, Singapore is very hot. Sometimes you really need to just get away from the sun, and sometimes it rains really heavily, and underground pedestrian network is really important. So this is our city center again, and we are looking at how to link up our underground pedestrian network extensively. And we also have an elevated pedestrian network. This is our second CBD, the Jurong Lake District. We are in the process of building on it. And the J-Walk, that's the second-story pedestrian link, connects more than 20 developments. It's more than 3.5 kilometers in length and extends about 500 meters around the train station. So this plan, the yellow highlighted routes show how it connects from the train station to all the different developments, extending to the residential developments around it too. So the next plan I want to share is the Ang Mo Kio Walking and Cycling Town. This is our public housing town. Actually, this is our PM's ward. We decided to use his ward to implement our first walking and cycling network. Actually, in our road plans, we already do safeguard footpaths, but we want to make it even safer and better. So we put in place a new cycling network. So we just opened a first 4-kilometer phase of this walking and cycling path. Just to quickly show, so before it could be quite congested, this is the linkway outside your school with a bus stop up front. So what is happening, I mean, this is not the completed picture, but we have set back further. We work with the school to take up more land, try to create a safer and broader path behind the bus stop so that it can be both cycling and walking. And this is under the viaduct as part of the route. And that's both a cycling and a walking path. So beyond towns, we are looking at expanding our Park Connector network. So our Park Connector network is a recreational network that allows people to enjoy cycling and jogging. Today we are at about, I think, 180 kilometers, if I remember correctly. And there are plans to expand it to 360 kilometers. As you see from the green networks connecting all the parks. Because it's recreational, it's intended to link up with all the parks. But of course, beyond parks, you will see that it does connect homes to key major transport nodes. And beyond that, we are working on a round island route. It's really intended to help to allow cyclists and those who want a recreational enjoyment of the island to go one round around the island. So these are some images of what we hope to achieve. This is really accomplished today. And to make walking enjoyable, of course, we have the Blue network. What we do is to expand on drainage reserve, naturalize it, and then expand the walking around it. So this is an image of a before and after. So lastly, I'll talk about placemaking. I think as many of the experts have also shared, it's very important to have a change in mindset, and sometimes what we need to do is to show the community what it means to take back cars, take away cars, reclaim the road space for streets. So these are just some initiatives to help show the community what we can do. So we have Car Free Sunday in the city. This happens once a month. This is our CBD area, Shenton Way, Robinson Road, and it goes around our city hall, which is the Padang. Some images of what happens. So we have a cycling group that comes together also with joggers and families. And of course, as many cities have shared, we have weekend road closures. This can be in historic districts where there are small streets and really interesting finds, and all we need to do is to close the streets. Of course, we have to work very hard with the tenants to show them that actually it is very beneficial to their business to close these streets and bring in more people. We also have our favorite place program. Basically, what happens is people can submit applications for what they think could be an interesting initiative in the place that they live, and we will provide some seed funding for them to initiate a grounds-up improvement work. And Parking Day, I think most of you are familiar with. So these are some initiatives in terms of placemaking that we've been doing. So lastly, I think research is another area that will help us to better see how we can improve in terms of walkability. So this is something that we did together with ETH to look at how different physical characteristics can be measured and how they can influence our perceived walking time. So for example, if you do have a tree-lined street, does that mean that you perceive walking to be much easier and shorter, and through that you can actually walk a much larger network? So they did some surveys of people walking, and then follow up with a web survey, and then analyze the data. Basically, they help us to quantify how we can look at various design interventions and what's the impact of each design intervention. So this is just an example how if you do add a grade crossing to one of these streets, you can actually increase their perceived ability to walk a much larger network. So what are some challenges? I believe that previous speakers have also mentioned this. It's really about how we look at it from different angles. You need to get community support. Of course, you need a top-down direction. If you can get political support, you make everything much easier and faster. You need to change people's mindsets through placemaking. And of course, to change travel behavior, we need to first make sure that there are good enough alternatives. If public transport is a good alternative, then people will make that switch. So in conclusion, I'd like to share that in Singapore, we take a multi-agency effort involving many different institutions, involving both grassroots and also stakeholders. It requires an extensive network, which we will need to realize incrementally, tapping on both public and private efforts. And lastly, it's critical to gain community support. So with that, I thank you.